In this video, I'm going to show you how to track an object from a video plate using Blender's match moving tools. And there are two processes here. First, we need to track the camera movement, and then we will track the prop that she's carrying, which is object tracking. Now, before we track this plate, I'm going to show you where you can find it. You can download the tracking plate from this website at hollywoodcamerawork.com. I'll include the link in this video. Now let's take a look at this footage. Right, it was shot in a HD resolution of 1280 by 1080. So this is like the Panasonic DVC Pro standard, where the 1280 is actually stretched to fill up the 16 by 9 aspect ratio. So when I downloaded the images, this is what they looked like. So this is the original image sequence, and when you open up the image, right, it doesn't fit the 16 by 9 image sequence. So when I try to track this image sequence within Blender, I have some problems. In fact, I caused Blender to Match Mover to crash. So what we need to do is that we need to convert this aspect ratio to fit the 16 by 9, correct 16 by 9 HD aspect ratio. So first we need to bring in this image sequence. And another thing I noticed about this image sequence is that for frame 175 seems to be corrupted. At least it was corrupted for me when I downloaded it. So I actually tracked from frame 0 all the way to frame 174. So first let's pre-process this image sequence. So let me just stop this and we'll start a new general layout, and then I'm going to go to create a video editing tab, okay, to bring in the image sequence. So go ahead and click on add image sequence, and then bring in the blaster walk sequence. So go and press A to select all the image sequence and then add the strip. So as you drag the timeline marker, you notice that the image, right, is this almost like a square aspect ratio. It doesn't fill up both sides because the default HD settings, right, is not filling up all these empty space, and in fact you have to switch over to the DVC Pro 1080 so it will stretch and fill it up. Okay, but however, if you're trying to match move this using the VFX match mover, okay, so let me just open up the same sequence. We're going to end up with this issue, right, where the image is this square layout. So we have to fix this. We have to re-export this out so that it matches a 16 by 9 sequence. So first, let me change the rendering resolution back to HD at HD TV 1080p, and then we're going to go over to compositing. So for this strip, right, I can remove it from the video editor, because later when we render out from the compositor, it will be rendering out this video editor content instead of the compositor. So let's go to compositing and let's enable use nodes. I'm going to get rid of this render layers, press X to delete, press Shift A, and then input the movie clip, and then we're going to bring in the image sequence just by clicking on this drop down, because we've already brought it in before. And if you can't find it, you can always click on this folder and then navigate to the folder to find the image sequence. Now you can click on the image, but we need to connect it to a viewer to see what this image looks like. So press Shift A to create a output and then viewer, and then click on the output of the image to image of the viewer. Right, now to offset this image, we're going to click on view, and then we're going to offset it a little bit to the right, and then maybe up a little bit, and then maybe zoom out a little bit. Okay, so that we can see what is the result of our comp. Okay, so now we need to add a scale node to rescale this so that it fits the full HD aspect ratio, or 1920 by 1080. So all you need to do is just press Shift A, go and create a scale, go and search for a scale node, and then just drag it in between the movie clip and the viewer, and then under the scale, change from relative to render size. Okay, so this will automatically rescale this to fit the full HD resolution. Now, of course, the image output from scale, you have to drag it out and then link it to composite. All right, with that done, we can now render it out into a new image sequence with the correct aspect ratio. So go over to the printer icon here, and then change the frame rate to 30 because this was the original frame rate. And then make sure that the color management is standard, okay, which it is. And then click on the output, go to the folder where you want to save the image sequence. Okay, I'm going to create a new folder, and then I'm going to call this corrected, or just call this HD aspect img seq, or image sequence for short. And then we go inside here, I call it blaster underscore corrected underscore. Just put an underscore there so that when it labels the number at the end, we'll have the proper image sequence. So click accept, and then for the render out, we don't need the alpha channel, we just need to render RGB for PNG. Color depth 8 is good enough, and then compression we're going to put it at 0. And now we can render out the resized image sequence. So click on render, and then click on render animation. Okay, so right now it is rendering the entire sequence. So you can click on the output folder just to monitor the image sequence, and then you can see the image sequence being rendered out. Okay, so now I can double click on this image, and then here we are, we have the correct image resolution and as well as the sequence or the aspect ratio. Okay, once it has finished rendering out, we're going to bring this image sequence. Okay, I have to go and stop the rendering because I did not set the correct render range. Let's go back to render here and just press escape to stop it. And then you can see here I have a lot of black frames. So what I should have done earlier on was to set the frame range from start to end at 175, which I failed to do early on. Okay, so let's go over and delete away the black frames. So select the frames and then delete them. So we have altogether 175 frames from 01 to 0175. So I'll be bringing this new image sequence within Blender and I'll do my tracking. So right now I will start with a new VFX layout, and then go and click on open to bring in the new image sequence. So this is the new image sequence. I'm going to click on the first frame. So I'm going to click on this list here, make sure I select the first frame and then click on open, and it should bring in the image sequence. Then click on set scene frames, so you'll set your scene to match the length of the image sequence. Click on prefetch to load it up to memory. You can scrub the timeline to inspect the footage. Now you can see that it's a little bit washed out on the highlights because we need to go and change the color settings in the color management under the render properties, and then change it from filmic to standard. And also we need to change our frame rate to the original 30 frames per second because that was the original frame rate where this footage was shot in. Okay, so now I'm going to use the fast method of tracking this footage. All right, so now for this camera footage, or for this live plate, right, we can easily use the detect features method to track and solve the camera movement. Now in bigger VFX studios, normally we will manually track all these features one by one. Okay, but in order to save time for this video, I'm going to use the detect features. So first, I want to make sure that I want to detect features, right, that is on the ground and that is stationary. I do not want to detect features that is on the actress and on the prop that she's holding. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a circular mask around her before we do our detect features. So to draw a quick mask around her, you just hold down to a D key, D for delta, hold down to your D key and then just left mouse click and drag, and then just draw a quick mask around her, okay, at the first frame, and then that's it. And then after that, we can click on detect features. Now before I detect features, I just want to increase my pattern size a little bit and then my search size slightly bigger. I'm going to use the location model. Keyframe is fine, and maybe I just want to use previous frame. And then for the tracking settings extra, I'm going to increase a correlation of 0.9, so to give it a little bit of a stricter requirement for the pattern before it moves on to the next frame. Okay, I'm going to increase the search size a little bit, and then now I'm going to hit detect features. And now you notice some of the features are being detected within this frame. So to make sure only features outside of her is detected, you can click on the detect features options here. Then under placement, you click on this option called outside annotated area. All right, and then we can start to adjust these values, like the margin. I'm going to increase the margin a little bit so that I do not want trackers to be too close to the edge of the screen. And then the threshold, by reducing the threshold, we will have more markers being detected around her. All right, and then distance, by increasing the distance, right, we can have the spread of the markers so that we don't have markers which are too close to one another. So with that done, I can press Alt S to take a look at the search area, or you can click on this clip display and then click on search area. So normally if you press Alt S, it will do the same thing. And then we can start to do our tracking. So to track forwards, we use the I also want to enable, okay, actually it's too late now. Okay, I'm going to delete away all these trackers because I forgot to include normalize. I'm going to just click on X to delete all the way the trackers. Turn on normalize, because I want all the color or brightness changes, right, to be equalized for each of the frame. So right now I'm going to click on detect features one more time, and I think this is good enough. Margin, maybe I'll increase a little bit. Okay, and then right now I'm ready to track. So press Ctrl T to track forwards. So everything seems to track pretty well, and in fact it tracked all the way to the end. But now we have to visually check for trackers which are not good. That means you can first use this graph here to look for inconsistent curves. Like for example, this one looks a bit suspicious because you can see that if all the motions are quite predictable, they will follow a general shape of this graph. So for some of the trackers, right, you can see that there's a lot of bumps. So most likely this one will have some problems trying to track properly. So we can have a closer look by clicking on this track tab. We can increase the size of this track thumbnail, and then we can scrub back and forth, and then we can see whether is it staying put or is it sliding all over the place. So another way is to enable lock to center by pressing L, so that we can have a closer look at this tracker, and then you can see that it is tracking and then it is sliding in certain areas. So we can get rid of this tracker. So this is not a very good tracker. And then let's take a look at other trackers to make sure that they are staying put. So generally all the trackers look about right. Okay, except for this one. So for this tracker, right, we can still use it for the first half, but only the point where her arm starts to overlap. So at this frame, right about maybe this frame here, I'm going to just delete every track that is after this frame. So you can click on this key here to clear the track path after that. So we can still keep this tracker. And then this tracker here, again, when the shoulder touches, there you can see it sliding. In fact, this one is sliding quite a lot, so I'm not going to use this one. So there's a reason why if I was solving this shot, I would prefer to manually track every single tracker myself. So I'm going to get rid of this one. Okay, so far so good. Most of the trackers are tracking well, except maybe for these two. I don't like these two here. And in fact, some of the trackers only track for a few frames, so these are not helping at all. So I'm going to get rid of these as well. And maybe this one, let me check. And then this one is also not a good tracker. And this one you can see is tracking a reflection instead, so not a good tracker. And this one, the highlight is sliding all over the place, so this is just going to introduce more errors instead. So let's take a look at this one here. Again, okay, not to my liking, that's why I'm getting rid of it. Okay, all the other trackers here seems to be staying put. Okay, this one's sliding a little bit, but still looks all right. Okay, so let's move on to the last frame, and then we're going to draw another annotation or another sort of like a border around her. So holding down to your D key, and then same thing, just draw it around her, and then close it up. And then we're going to use the detect features again, and this time we're going to track backwards. Okay, first I'm going to get rid of features, right, which, okay, let me undo that. I'm going to get rid of features which I don't think will stand a good chance of being tracked. This one looks all right. Okay, I don't want to track this one. This one looks okay. Not this one, not this one. And also I'm going to just manually put in some trackers myself by holding down the control and left mouse click on features which I think stand a better chance of being tracked. You can press S to scale it up and then just put it there. And let's see, maybe maybe this one over here. Okay, so now we are ready to track. So press A to select all of them, and then press Ctrl Shift T to track backwards. And again, I find this tracker is not working for me because it's sliding all over the place. Okay, so make sure you don't delete all the trackers, just click on trackers which you can see that is sliding. Okay, I'm going to temporarily turn off the lock because every time I click on the tracker, it's just going to recenter everything. Okay, this one is not good. I'm going to get rid of this one. This one is too close to the border. I'm just going to get rid of that one. Okay, this one barely tracked any frames at all. Okay, maybe I want to track this one. Holding down the control, left mouse click, press S to scale this up, and then track it backwards, Control Shift T, and then it's just going to track a few frames, but that's good enough. Maybe this one is promising. I'm going to just scale this up slightly, Control Shift T, and it tracks very well. Okay, it does slide a little bit, so I'm gonna get rid of this, and then maybe I want to change to a fine. Holding down Control and then track this one, then Control Shift T, and this time you can see that the A-fine does a better job at tracking and staying at the center of the pattern, right? So that's why different motion models, right, perform differently. Okay, I think right now I want to start from the center, and then let's see, I think I have enough trackers to actually do a quick solve. So if you feel that you don't have enough trackers, you can continue to add a bit more. Okay, actually this pink strip here is very promising. I'm going to create one A-fine tracker, so I'm going to scale it up until it covers the center of this strip, and then I'm going to press Ctrl T to track forwards, and then going back center here, and then Ctrl Shift T to track backwards. So this strip actually appears quite a lot, so, and it is tracked very well. So okay, I think I have enough trackers for now. I can do my quick solve. Now I do not want to see the annotation anymore, so I can click on the annotation tab here and click on the eyeball to hide it. Then I can go over to solve, and then I can start to do my solve. So first we need to choose a good keyframe. I'm going to choose a portion where she's actually walking forwards. Okay, maybe a frame between 90 and 100. So 90 and 100. Let's try that first. You can enable keyframe to let Blender choose the keyframe for you, but sometimes I find that it doesn't give me very good results. So I'll just do initial solve and see what's the error. So 1.55, which is actually pretty good. So next I want to enable the solving of the focal length. Then click on solve again, and then I brought the error down to 0.73, which is actually very, very good. So to bring the error down further, we're going to look at the dope sheet, and then we're going to look for problem tracker points. So you want to look for tracker points, right, which are visible for a long time and yet exhibit very high errors. So as long as it's below, if it's below one, the error value is below 1, it's generally okay. But if you find something that is above 1 or even like 2, so maybe these trackers, right, let's take a look at what tracker is this. This tracker only appeared towards the end. So it's actually this tracker over here. So maybe if you have enough trackers, you can just press X to delete away, and then I can run the solve again and then see whether the errors goes down. Okay, not much. So let's go and look for other problematic trackers. Okay, with a high error. So the next highest error is this one. Okay, and let's take a close look at it. And if I slide this, you can see that there's a lot of sliding going on in this tracker, and it has an error of 2. So I'm going to get rid of this one, and then let's do the solve again. And now you can see the error has went down a little bit more, 0.64. Now you can continue to look for trackers with very high errors, but for this value of 0.64, I think for this demonstration, it's actually pretty good already. Okay, but let's take a look. Maybe 1.3. Actually, 1.3 is really not that bad. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Okay, there's some sliding going on this one, so I'm gonna get rid of this. Press X to delete. Then this one, let's take a look at this one. Okay, it is tracking a highlight on the ground. Let's get rid of it. Okay, so I deleted 2 of the 1.3s. Let's do the solve again, and now it's 0.55. I think 0.55 is pretty good already. So I will use this to now start to lay out my camera movement. So to lay out the camera movement, first we need to establish the location or the orientation of the floor. So we need to select 3 trackers. Now before we select them, I need to select all my trackers by pressing A and then pressing Ctrl L. Okay, pressing Ctrl L to lock them so that I would not accidentally move them. Okay, now select actually I should have done that before I did the solve. So select the 3 trackers that they are on the floor. Now I would like to select trackers that are quite far apart, so that when these trackers will fall, when you connect them together, they will form a flat plane. So then we can now indicate that this is the floor, and then I want to indicate one point to act as the origin. So select this. I'm going to select this tracker, and I want to say that this is the origin, and then I want to select this tracker. I want to say that this is the y-axis. Okay, so for the scale, I'm going to select 2 trackers, and then I'll say that this is actually maybe 1 meters or 1 Blender unit, or maybe 2 or 3. So usually I want to put a slightly higher unit value. Maybe I want to put 4, and then I want to click on set scale, and you can see the layout, right? The grid squares become smaller, and then once that is done, I can click on set the background so I can see the background, and then I can say set up tracking scene. So with that done, I can scrub the timeline and then see how the camera layout looks like. And so far so good. All right, so now to verify that everything is laid out properly, I'm going to just go over and create a general layout tab, and then go over to the layout tab and then look through the camera by pressing 0, or you can click on the camera symbol here. I'm going to select the camera, and then I'm going to go over to the camera properties under the background images, and then under opacity and bump it up to 1 so that I can see what I'm seeing here. Okay, I also want to turn on X-ray by clicking on this button, so to see that all the things are locked and moving nicely. Now, if for some reason you feel that your orientation is a bit off, you can select the camera by clicking on this border here, and then go over to the transform pivot point and change it to 3D cursor, so that when you rotate, you can actually rotate in different axes to realign your layout. So for example, I want to realign my rotation a little bit, so I'm going to click on R followed by Z to rotate so that the y-axis is pointing down this path instead. Okay, and if for some reason, right, if there's a slope, you can press R followed by X to rotate it up or down. But in this case, right, I'm going to right mouse click to undo. In this case, I think the layout looks good. Okay, so the camera portion, or the camera tracking portion, is working. So now we have to move on to track these colorful balls on this prop here. So let's go back to motion tracking tab, and then we're going to set up our object tracking. So to do the object tracking, go over to the track tab here, click on the drop down under the objects, and then click on the plus sign to create a object track. And you know that the markers are now cleared. Now we have to go back to tracking again, and this time I want to use location, and I'm going to use a previous frame. Normalize is fine, and then we're going to try to track all these balls. Okay, I want to start from the center frame, and then I'll start by tracking this white ball first. So hold on to Control and left mouse click on the center here, and you want to scale this up slightly. Now also you notice that I can't see my yellow cross here, so you can click on this button to turn on this black cross. You want to try to track the ball right at the center. Okay, and of course if you can see these balls right throughout the entire frame, that'll be the best. But if not, you will have to manually put in some keyframes yourself. Okay, so once that is done, I'm going to track forward, Control T to track forwards, and this one seems to track very well. You can press L to turn on lock center, and then just to make sure that it generally keeps to the center. Now it might slide slightly a little bit, but I think it shouldn't affect the final solve. Now scrub back to the first frame and then track backwards. So Control Shift T to track backwards, and then this one works pretty well, and we can lock this tracker by pressing Control L. And now let's move on to another ball. So I'm going to track this one over here. So hold on to Control and then left mouse click, then turn on this cross to make sure that it's at the center, then press Control T, and then it will track forwards. Then I'm going to bring back, then Control Shift T to track backwards, and then now we have two of these balls tracked, and you can see that there's a slight shift over here. So what I'm going to do is, and I'm going to maybe change my tracking a little bit, and instead of previous frame, I'm going to use keyframe for the new trackers, and then for the existing tracker itself, I'm going to go over to the track settings, the motion model. I'm going to change from previous frame to keyframe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the center again, and I want to delete everything that was tracked from behind. So I'm going to go forward a few frames, and then left mouse click on this area, and I want to make sure that I know which ball I'm tracking. Okay, it's the one at the back. So left mouse click and grab the center, and then move it to the center here. So what I'm doing here is that I'm establishing another keyframe at this frame here, and then I'm going to go back to the last frame, or rather the first frame, and then move the tracker over to the keyframe here. Okay, and then I can press Alt right mouse button to track forwards, and Alt right mouse, right cursor, and then you can see that because there's another ball entering the frame, it stops tracking. So I'm going to come over here and then manually left mouse click here and manually put it into place. You can hold down to shift and left mouse click to track it, so it'll be a little bit more precise. Then holding down to Alt and right cursor key again to continue to track. Then I'm gonna left mouse click here again and then manually put another keyframe and Alt right cursor key until it joins to the next frame. So this is just to ensure that your every frame that you capture is in the right vicinity. Okay, so at this point I think I can press Ctrl T, so hopefully it should track forward. Okay, it doesn't want to track forward, so I'm going to press Alt right mouse button. Okay, so I have to manually add another keyframe here. Again, I think it's because another ball is entering the frame. That's why it stops tracking. So I'm going to now track forwards. So this is the portion where it can become a bit tedious. Okay, I'll try Ctrl T. Okay, track a few frames until it drops out again. So next frame, and then I'll left mouse click here and then manually put it into place again. And then Alt right cursor until it links to the next half. So you can see there's a lot of manual tracking involved. There's a little bit of sliding, but I think this will be fine for now. Now if you want to be a bit nitpicky, you will have to really put in a lot of keyframes, right, to get it to track. Okay, so right now I want to track maybe start from the center. I want to track this one, so I want to lock this tracker, then holding down the Control, then left mouse click and turn on this cross. Then I'm going to track forward, press Ctrl T, track forwards, and then you only track a few frames. Okay, maybe I want to scale this up slightly, press Ctrl T again. Okay, maybe I have to manually track one by one for this one again. Okay, I can continue from here, then click here to track again. You can use this E key to track forwards. If you hold down the E, you can say track forward and then click on here and then track forwards again. Okay, maybe this time I want to change instead of keyframe to previous frame. Hopefully it will track forwards, and it does. So it tracks forwards until to this frame. Now I want to track backwards, and it actually tracked backwards. But you can see a little bit of sliding going there. So from here onwards, I'm going to delete away all the data from behind, and then I want to manually supervise the track. So holding down the Alt and left cursor to track back one frame at a time, and then you might want to move the tracker a little bit. Okay, this one is sliding a little bit, so I just want to push it back and let it track all the way to the end. Okay, basically you want to try to track the center as much as possible. Okay, now I want to track this one. Now first I need to lock this tracker, then holding down the Control, then this time instead of keyframe I'm going to use previous frame. Holding down the Control, left mouse click, and then position the cross in the center. Okay, make sure you click this button here and press Ctrl T and see how far it goes. Actually this one tracks perfectly. Okay, there's a little bit of sliding going on, but we're going to ignore that and we're just going to use that one. Then maybe we'll try this one here. This one looks promising. Ctrl T, track forwards, and it actually tracked all the way nicely. Okay, then maybe I want to track the green ball. Holding down the Control, left mouse click, And in fact, you want to increase your chances of tracking it, you can turn off the red channel and the blue channel so that you only track the green colors. So Control T, and it tracks all the way to the end. Okay, then I'm going to lock this. You can see that we are still not able to solve yet because you can see the red zone here. So we need about minimum 8 tracks before the tracker will solve. Okay, so we still have one more white ball here. Control left mouse click, and I'm going to track backwards first. Control Shift T, and going back to the middle. Control T to track forwards. Then I'm going to lock this, and then we still have one more ball here. Control left mouse click to track this ball. Control T to track forwards, and go back to here. Control Shift T to track backwards. Okay, actually I think I've tracked this tracker before already, so let me just delete this. Yeah, this ball was already tracked before, so I want to maybe track this. Okay, maybe I want to try this red ball here. This red ball is actually a bit damaged, so I'm going to track slightly lower here, and then I'm going to track the red channels and press Control T and then see how far it goes. Alright, so it started from here and then it started to go out of frame a little bit. So I'm going to move this back to the center here. Control Shift T, track backwards, and it seems to track a little bit better now, but although there's a little bit of sliding going on there. Okay, but again, if you want to have more precision, right, you would want to try to manually monitor the track frame by frame. When it slides, then you start to move it. Okay, and I think I'll just track one more tracker here, which is this ball here. Control left mouse click, and then I'm going to track forwards. Control T, and let's see, it stays, or does it stay in the center? Yeah, pretty much. And Control Shift T to the beginning. Alright, so now we can lock this one, and we can now try to solve it. Now, to solve this one, right, you have to make sure you find a frame where there is parallax motion. Okay, so you can see the object is turning from here to here. Okay, or you can also choose from here to here. This will be a good keyframe range. So maybe I will start from this keyframe. So you can use this shortcut key, Shift S, set keyframe A, or you can manually enter it here. Then the next keyframe is this keyframe here. So Shift S and then set keyframe B, okay, which is 33 and 98. Okay, and then we're going to try to solve this. So it's actually, no, 27 and 53, between 27 and 53. So I'm going to click on Solve Object Motion. And we actually get a very good solve error of 0.71. And we can see that only one of our trackers has reached the error point of 1, which is, which tracker point is this? Yeah, it's that red one because it's sliding a little bit, but that is fine. Okay, so if you look at the markers right on your layout, you can see the markers are moving quite on point, right? They are staying quite stably in that region. So now how do we get this object tracking information into another object? So let's go to layout, and let me just move this cube out of the way. So I press GZ1. Then I'm just going to modify this cube a little bit. I'm going to press tab to go to edit mode, press 3, select the top face, press S to scale it. Okay, I need to change my scaling transform pivot point to median, and scale it until I got a pyramid. Then Control I to invert, then press S, Shift Z to scale the rest down non-uniformly. Then press tab to get out. Then I got one pyramid shape here. Okay, and then if you want to see the trackers right in your layout view, you have to click on this your sorry, not this one, the overlays, and then click on motion tracking. Then the motion tracking markers, if they're too big, you can change the size, make it down a little bit. Okay, and also another thing that you can do is to change the colors of your trackers. So I'm going to go back to my motion tracking, and I'm going to select my trackers. Okay, unfortunately I can only do this one by one. Okay, let me see what I can change all the colors at once. So I'm going to click on object, and yeah, unfortunately I can only do this one by one. I have to click on object, click on the custom presets, and then change it to object. So what this does is that you'll change my object trackers into this pink color. So I'm going to select this one. Okay, so now all the trackers has been changed into it's a little bit tedious that I have to do this one by one. There's no way that I can select all and then change the presets. So anyway, if you're doing this, maybe we can change the presets or change the colors before we actually start to track. So maybe that will be a better workflow. But so now we have the trackers changed into a pink color so that we can align our object, okay, to the plate. All right, so now how do we bring in another object to align to the plate? Now you can go to any 3D, you can use the Windows Paint 3D program. I find that this program, right, has a lot of free very nice 3D models that we can bring in. So I'm going to bring in like maybe a rocket. Okay, let's try to bring a cartoon rocket, maybe this one. Okay, and then we are going to save it out. So click on menu, save as 3D object, 3D model, save as a 3D model, and we're going to save it as a GLB model, and we're going to save it into our blaster walk location, and then give it a name and save. So now we're going to import it in. So file, import the GLB 3D model, then go and bring in the model and then import it in. So now you can see the rocket is visible. Okay, so now I like to process this model a little bit. I don't like it being attached to this empty. So I'm going to select this model, and then I'm going to press Alt P to unparent it. Then I can get rid of this empty, and you can select the rocket in the outliner and then just name it accordingly. Then I'm going to take a close look at the rocket. I just press the zoom to selection, which is your delete key in your number pad, or you can click on view and align view to or view selected or frame selected here. So that will do the same thing. I'm going to turn off the X-ray so that I can see my rocket. So I'm going to select the rocket and then just bring it out a little bit. I want to put the pivot point in the center, so right mouse click, set origin to geometry. So right now it's in the center, and then I want to rescale this, maybe scale it up slightly bigger, then press Ctrl A to freeze the transforms for all the transforms. And now I want to find a good frame which I can align the rocket right to the tracker point. So if I scrub the timeline, you can see the object markers, right, moving accordingly. So I'm going to find a frame which I can align. So maybe at this frame over here. So I'm going to select one of the markers, here. Okay, apparently I don't think I can select this. Okay, so if you cannot select the markers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert these markers right into a mesh object. So to do that, go to motion tracking and then press A to select all the markers, and then go to geometry and then say 3D markers to mesh. Or you can also link an empty to the track. But I'm going to say 3D markers to mesh, and it's going to create a 3D 3D object made up of vertices. So go to your layout, and then you can see it's being overlaid by this markers. You can see the tracks over there. So select the tracks, then make sure it's selected here, then right mouse click on it, then go set origin to geometry. So now I can see the origin appears as a dot here. Then now with this object, the track selected, you can press Shift S, then you can say cursor to selected. So with the cursor at this position, now I can select the rocket, and then I can press Shift S again, and this time I choose selection to cursor. So the cursor, so the rocket, right, jumps to the cursor. Right now my rocket's pivot point is not in the center, so I'm going to reset it again by set the origin. So origin to geometry, and then I'm going to do it one more time, Shift S, selection to the cursor. Alright, so now it is positioned to the correct frame, and I can use the rotation, press R to rotate. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the top view. Now to change to the top view, right, you can press number 7 on your number pad, and then I will just rotate until it matches the orientation of these markers. Then you can also press 1 to go to the side view, and you can press R to rotate again. And I think the orientation looks pretty much okay. You can middle mouse click and drag to orbit. The orientation looks about right. Let me just go to the view here. Now I just need my rocket to be a little bit longer. So I'm going to change the transform orientation instead of global to local, so that when I click on scale, I can use the scale manipulator to make it longer like that. Okay, and then I'm going to use the rotate manipulator and maybe adjust a bit of rotation until it matches the rotation of the plate. Okay, so once that is done, you can also turn on X-ray to help you see through. Okay, maybe I'll just rotate just a little bit more here. Okay, so that's how I do my orientation. Now you can also try to bring it and manually move it to this space here. Okay, with that done, right now I'm going to assign the constraint, the object motion constraint, into this this 3D object. Okay, so I'm going to switch off my X-ray view, then go over to the constraint button. So click on add object constraint, click on object solver. Then for the object, obviously we want to use our object solve, and then the camera, of course our solved camera, and then we have to click on set inverse so that the camera or the 3D model will reappear. So now I can also press Z and change to material preview so that we can see what the rocket looks like. And so now I can see the rocket is now being stuck to the actress. Okay, so now if you want, you can also do a quick render output by going over to view and then click on viewport render animation. Now before you do that, you have to make sure that you are saving it out as a movie. I'm going to call this blast rocket underscore walk, and then accept, and I'm going to render it out as a FFmpeg video. Encoding, I'm going to use the MPEG-4 container, and everything else I'm going to leave it as it is, 30 frames per second, and then click on. Now if you do not want to see all these other things, right, you can go over to the drop down panel here. I don't want to see the floor, I don't want to see the axis, I don't want to see the cursor, annotation, I do not want to see everything else. Okay, and also I want to hide the motion tracking stuff. Okay, and then maybe these markers I also want to hide it. Okay, and then we can now render this out very quickly. Just click on view, viewport render animation, and then it will actually render it out. Okay, so this is just a quick preview. So of course, if you want to have proper ground shadows, you want to have proper reflections, you need to do a little bit more compositing. Okay, so this is just for me to check that the track works, and this is what the video looks like. Okay, so you can have a lot of fun with this. You can start to bring in other objects. So let me just save this version first. And then I'm going to open up my previous one. And you can bring in all sorts of 3D models. Okay, for example, this Gatling gun was brought in from Sketchfab. And so that you can make the actress carry all sorts of weapons. Okay, if the Gatling gun is not something you like, you can make her carry a rocket, which this one is something which I quickly modeled. And of course, you can make her carry a giant hot dog, if that's what you want. Okay, so this is how you do the camera tracking and then the object tracking in Blender. So I hope this video will be able to guide you along in how to solve this kind of situations. All right, thank you for watching.